life's journey has been to serve others, whether going through health and life coaching or international service missions, fundraising efforts for vital causes. There's a lot more that she does too. And now she's a published author, and I absolutely love her book. You guys are going to love her. Her name is Tiffany Owen. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Like, I'm so excited. You just have me so energized with your energy.
Yeah. Well, I think we match there.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't match here.
I can help you with that.
You are yoked. Well, right now I have whiplash, so I have to be really careful with a lot of the neck movement and stuff. Kind of sucks. I woke up with whiplash. That's how you know you're getting old. So, Tiffany, where are you originally from? I know this because I read the book.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Northeast Texas, a couple hours east of Dallas and about an hour from Shreveport, Louisiana.
Well, that explains the slight hint of an accent. It's lovely.
Thanks.
You went through so much crap. Oh my gosh. And it started at such a young age, girl. Holy crap. So walk us through it a little bit. Tell us, when did it start and what kind of progressed from there, put you on the path you're on now?
Gosh, so I struggle with this question because there's so much, and there were so many defining moments in my life. And it's not like the traditional, I was an abused child, things like that's it, or neglected, maybe emotionally neglected, but I had everything I needed growing up financially, but I was left home alone, probably starting around the age of 6. My parents were entrepreneurs. They worked. Both of my parents have been married 5 times, 5 different times. So I was growing up in a house that was not a good example for marriage and relationships without knowing this, right? So sexual abuse started, from what I can remember, being touched inappropriately around the age of 6. My parents got divorced when I was about 8. They were 22 years apart. So my mom was my dad's 3rd wife. And I had half brothers and sisters, but they were like 13 years and older. So I grew up as an only child. And once they got divorced, my mom got remarried immediately, but I was left home alone. And that had me looking for attention in all the wrong places. And I had a huge fear of abandonment. I wanted attention and affection. And I was provided for very well. I went to private schools, all the things, but I don't have many memories of family things, being loved on. I have 4 children, and now I know that that wasn't normal. It could have been better, right? So that fear of abandonment led me to getting involved with older boys at a very young age. And my grandmother was a big part of this. She couldn't say no to me. My mom would leave me with her. And at 12, she was letting me smoke and cigarettes and drink alcohol and be alone with boys that were like 18 years old and older. And so the first time I was taken advantage of sexually, he was 18 and I was 12. So that just led, I couldn't say no. I didn't say yes. I was in that survival state, I guess. And I wanted attention, and it was attention, to be honest. And so I didn't know, but I was being left alone in these situations, looking for attention. I became very promiscuous, lots of alcohol, smoking cigarettes, all the things. And my first abusive relationship started when I was 15.
I was with Max, right?
Yes, yeah, that's my daughter's dad. She's 22, and yeah, it was textbook relationship, abusive relationship, very, very much so. And I'm not sure where to go with that, because that's when everything just really got out of control. And in my mom's defense, I made straight A's I worked full time. I was on drill team. I was in student council. On the outside, you would not know that I had all these things going on.
Right.
So you never know what someone is going through.
Absolutely. And in your book, you talk about how you were with him from the age of 15 all the way until the age of 23, even though that abuse started so early on. And that was because, in your own words, you said it was better than nothing. You had nobody to love you, you had nobody paying attention to you.
Mhm.
Yeah. A lot of us
Yeah.
end up in relationships like that because of that reason.
Mhm. Negative attention was better than no attention or being alone,
Yeah.
for sure.
Absolutely. And this leads to a lot of other issues that we have in our lives: substance abuse, alcohol abuse, abuse of our own family members. We start alienating people that we love, or the people that we're with begin to alienate those people until we don't have any kind of a support system. You
Mhm.
went through all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. And in abusive relationships, a very big red flag is the isolation that the boyfriend or the husband will really try to alienate you from your friends and family, because they know your friends and family are probably telling you to leave them. And in this case, this boyfriend, he would sleep with my friends. He would do things where I felt like I didn't have friends. It was horrible, horrible. And I would try to break up with him. We'd get back together. It was mental hell.
Well, and let's be honest here. If your boyfriend or your husband or your fiance or whoever is going off and sleeping with your friends, they're not your friends anyway.
Mm-mm, they
you're
aren't.
you're still allowing these horrible people into your life because it's better than nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah. My fear of abandonment was all consuming. And it really was all the way up until probably just a few years ago.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm
How
43. So,
Hey, we're the same age. No
yeah.
wonder we
So
match so
there's
well.
that. That's a long time.
So how old were you the first time you tried to take your own life?
Yeah. So I was 16. I didn't have a really good relationship with my mom. She left me home alone a lot. She, stayed with her boyfriend at the time because she'd already been married and divorced again. So like my junior and senior year, I pretty much lived by myself because she would go stay with him. Anyways, we did not ever have a very close relationship, and I really wanted that because I saw my friends have relationship with their parents. And so I had gotten in an argument with her. Max at the time was being abusive, like always, picking a fight, and I just couldn't take anymore. And I remember it was the first time I overdosed because I ended up trying to kill myself 4 different times. I just wanted them to stop being mean to me. It wasn't that I really wanted to die. I just remember saying that over and over in my head. I just want them to stop being mean to me. And so I ended up overdosing on a leave, and nothing happened right away. And
I
I got
remember reading you woke up the next morning, you're like, well, I guess that didn't work.
yeah, I mean, seriously, I was like, this didn't work. So a few days later, I ended up with horrible back pain. And I took myself to doctor's visits. My mom never took me. So she was like, well, if you're that bad, go to the doctor. So I did, and they did some blood work, and the doctor said I was in acute renal failure. And here's how, like, I was smart, but not smart. Nobody knew that I overdosed. It had gone on for a few days. So I didn't get like a mental health consultation or put in for, to counseling or anything because I kept it a secret. So I ended up in the hospital with renal failure, and no one ever knew that I did that to myself.
And how many times did Max come to visit you? How many times did your mom come to visit you? How long were
My
you in the
mom
hospital?
didn't, yeah, my mom didn't stay with me one night. I had friends, one of my friends' moms, she stayed with me, and my dad did stay with me one night. And I didn't understand like why, like what was wrong with me? Why didn't she love me? Why didn't she want to have anything to do with me? Um, Now I know like she had a lot of trauma herself. And so I got my power back whenever I was able to see her with compassionate eyes. But at the time it was hurtful. Like
Yeah,
I didn't
absolutely. You're
have, I was
16.
in the hospital for a week and no support. no support. So my self-worth was like nothing, zero.
Now, going through this, you're fighting for your life in the hospital, ironically, after trying to take your own life. Did you, for a little while, find that zeal, that zest to want to live, to fight back against this?
I don't think I was looking at it that way. I think every day was just me putting one foot in front of the other and just surviving.
Yeah.
Like there's a difference between surviving and living, I think.
Yeah.
So,
And it's so hurtful in my own experiences when somebody says, "Oh, you've been through worse, you can get through this too." There's always going to be that straw on the camel's back.
mm-hmm,
This, like you said, you attempted 4 different times.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Or God's not going to give you anything more than you can handle. Well, that might be true, but in the moment, it doesn't really make you feel better.
Right, right. This is not helpful information. Thank you.
Not
I
right now.
already know it does not compute right now.
Yeah. No, no. So
And it's
yeah.
not God that's giving you the problems. It's the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And thank God. So with bringing up God, I am a Christian, and obviously He saved me many times and has used me in a very big way. But I didn't grow up in church. I didn't have a good example of a healthy marriage. But what I did have is, I like to call them earth angels, like teachers, friends, parents, that planted seeds, or got taken to church with them. I did see, or I had spiritual mentors in my 20s that would pray with me and walk with me. So I did have that. And so that's how I had hope.
Wow. It's such a blessing that you had that too. You know, you feel so abandoned by your own family and these other families. And there's no substitute for your own family, for that longing that you have, but there is guidance in there too.
Yeah. Yeah. So and it just gets worse because, in the book, like I kind of do figure out why my mom was so distant, which was because she was keeping a very big secret from me. So, but going back to first abusive marriage, I 15 to 23, and God literally took me out of that. I was not going to leave him. I was not going to get a divorce like my parents did. I was going to do whatever it took to make it work. And God literally just pulled me out of that marriage. I mean, it was really amazing how it happened, because
You
I
were
would.
such a straight A student. You're not going to let yourself fail, and losing a
Mhm.
marriage is a failure, right? No.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I did believe like in miracles and that God could change his heart.
Yeah.
But I was praying and God was answering my prayers, but not the way I wanted or thought that I needed, right?
Right.
But I jumped right back into another abusive relationship and got married again 9 months later.
Yeah. And it took you a while before you finally found the right guy. And your husband now, oh my gosh, reading about him. Oh,
And
what
the
an
letter,
absolute treasure.
he's amazing. And so I had him write, the foreword in the book or whatever, because
Yeah.
I think it's important for the people who are the significant other of someone who's been through so much trauma, for them to be recognized, or because they have to go through a lot.
Yeah.
How do you love a
Absolutely.
person who's been through so much?
Right. It wasn't easy for my husband either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, speaking of the book, it's called Wounded to Warrior, and I absolutely love this bright red cover. It matches my hair. But it just looks awesome. This is such a great picture of you. You look powerful, and I'm not just talking about your muscles, because dang girl, you got some muscles. But you are this beacon of hope and strength that people can now look to, not just to learn how to get their bodies in better shape, but how to get their minds and their hearts and their families in better shape. But that was not an easy thing to get to.
It wasn't. I mean, 4 marriages by the time I was 29, 4 suicide attempts, a prescription pill addiction, an alcohol addiction, multiple treatment centers, finding out my dad wasn't my real dad, being raped by a very close sibling, just to find out, oh, well, he wasn't your sibling, or well, yeah, he was my half sibling, but he wasn't your brother. Your dad's not your real dad. That's how I found out that I was conceived by an anonymous sperm donor from a sperm bank. And so there was a disconnect between my mom and I because she was keeping that secret.
And how old were you when she finally confessed this to you?
She didn't. I found out in a counseling appointment because my counselor said, you should tell your uncle what happened to you. My dad had already passed away and he was helping me financially. And so I did. And he said, well, your dad wasn't your real dad. Like, it's okay because he wasn't really your family member. That's how I felt in that moment. I had no idea. So I was about 29.
That's cold, man.
I had no idea. I think it just came out of his mouth.
Oh,
I don't think, we probably should think before we speak in those situations,
yeah.
but it's been crazy finding out that and then matching with like over 20 half siblings.
Goodness gracious.
And that did not go well either.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've already grown up with this fear of abandonment and being completely left alone. And then to find out that the man that you've looked at as your family and your father the whole time was never your father. This is adding layer upon layer upon layer of all of this garbage. Your mom couldn't tell you. Your dad didn't tell you. Your uncle, oops, told you.
Yeah.
What happened in your brain when that happened?
Gosh, it really felt, I can only describe it as when stuff like that would happen to me, like literally my heart being ripped out and all the energy leaving my body. Like, I just can't do anymore. But I always ended up getting back up and doing more.
Yeah.
But in that moment, total defeat, hopeless, just paralyzed. I would get in a state of being paralyzed, fight or flight. I would get in freeze mode.
Wow. Yeah. Man, it just sucks. It just sucks. When you finally did pick yourself back up, how did you get through it? What were your secrets to successfully overcoming everything that you've had to go through?
Gosh. Well, first coming out of denial, right? And I had to do that multiple times through. So it's been a process. Like I would feel like I was getting better, but then I would realize I had not dealt with me and things that I really needed to change and work on, because when we're triggered, that's just an alarm that something hasn't been healed, right? So triggers kept happening and I would do okay. I didn't use prescription pills anymore to change the way I felt, but then alcohol became a problem. And then I would not drink for a little bit and then I would drink again. So I had to hit a bottom where I was threatened to lose everything. And that was enough for me to say, okay, I have to dig myself out of this hole. It's my responsibility and I'm going to do whatever it takes. But I'm the problem.
That's such a hard thing to really say to yourself too. But you talk in your book about taking responsibility for your role. That's not taking responsibility for the role that other people have played, but taking responsibility for the role that you've played. And that's dirty words, man. People don't want to hear this mess.
That can be very controversial. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also true.
Mhm. Yeah. Do you want me to go into that just a little bit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the first time I heard that in a counseling session, that we have a part in everything, good and bad. You have a part in everything. You are getting a payoff. There's a part. I got really angry and shut down. And that made me very mad for a very long time, because basically I thought this therapist was saying, well, it was my fault. Like, how could I possibly have a part in abuse or sexual abuse or any of that? How could that be my fault? So it took probably 14 more years for me to figure out, okay, if I have a part in it, and I can see what I could have done different, or I own my part, I get my power back. It has nothing to do with them, but I get some power in the situation to where I'm like, okay, well, I probably wouldn't have been raped had I not been blacked out drunk. I did have control over that. So therefore, I don't need to drink. I'm not a responsible drinker. That was my part. So it is controversial, but if you can, and my mom, like, yes, she was not the best mom, but I probably was not easy to deal with either emotionally. Looking back, if she didn't have the coping skills and the emotional intelligence to deal with an unstable child that had highs and lows that were emotional, I was probably really hard to deal with.
Yeah.
So by doing that and seeing both sides, it really helped in my healing.
Yeah. You know, now that you've come through all of this, part of what you do is you speak very openly about the dangers and the issue of suicide. You have a part of your book that you would like to read that is why you talk about suicide. I'm going to fumble along.
Okay. So this is why I feel compelled to share my experience with suicide ideation and attempts. Have you ever thought to yourself, I could never do something like that to my loved ones? How could they do that? They are so selfish. What were they thinking? Or how did I not know they were feeling this way? First, if you've thought of suicide or attempted suicide, I want you to understand that you need to talk with someone about your thoughts and actions. Like me, you need help working through whatever issues and experiences drive you to want to end your life. If someone you loved committed suicide, it is also not your fault. You may have noticed some irregularities or been unable to reach them, but the fact that they chose to do what they did is not your fault. Remove that burden from yourself now, please. It isn't anyone's fault. In my experience, I was overtaken by emotional and mental torment that stemmed from more than one thing. One minute I was fine, the next I wasn't. Then there were other moments, my struggles with my mental health, my current traumatic abusive circumstances, PTSD, battle with addiction, or pure exhaustion from trying to live life on life's terms overtook me. I was just too tired to keep fighting. My purpose in sharing my personal experience with 4 suicide attempts over the span of the age of 16 to 41 is first to give hope and inspiration to those who struggle. More importantly, I want them to know they are not alone and they are not bad people. Life doesn't have to be a constant battle where you are a prisoner of your own mind and circumstances. I also want to offer introspection to those who don't understand why someone would try to hurt themselves or take their own life, especially when it seems like so many people love them and they have so much to live for. I want to offer you a different perspective so you can have compassion for those who do not have any fight left in them. I never once thought I would be hurting someone who loved me when I tried to take my own life because of my unstable mind and momentary insanity. I was a burden to everyone who loved me. At that moment, the only thing that went through my mind was how much they would be better off without me. The thought that they would all be better off without me played in a continuous loop in my head. In sharing my most torturous mental moments, I hope I can offer you a different perspective into the mind of someone who is unable to fight the mental battle and torment that overtakes a person when they make that decision that they just can't go on any longer. It is absolutely devastating for all parties involved. It is tragic, but there is hope and healing. There is a way out.
When I picked up the book just now to flip to that page, because I have that marked also, I had a couple of other markers here that I had to flip through. And one of them, I was sitting in the living room reading this book, and my husband was sitting over near me, and I couldn't even read it out loud. I circled the words in ink and passed him the book, and it was only 2 sentences. I had to be the problem. I was the common denominator.
Mm.
My mother said this to me so often when I was a child growing up. When I read this book, I felt like I'd found a kindred spirit.
Mhm.
You actually get it. You know that pain. And I love that you're able to help people. I'm getting tears in my
And
eyes.
now I'm gonna cry because that's exactly why I wrote this book. You are why I wrote this book, and or people who love you, like I want them to know like how we feel, like what is really happening. So that's exactly how I wanted you to feel.
Yeah. Well, you nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, God just used me as a vessel because I am not a writer. I'm really good at working out and, anyways, relationships, but whew, this was a challenge for me.
Mm.
Sure.
It's monumental what you've done. And I love that you now can travel and speak about this. I know you've got some more speaking engagements coming up. You work with people, you talk to people, you get them through this stuff, you help them to find the services that they need. You have dedicated your life to this. And I'm not wearing a hat, but I would take my hat off to you if I was.
But you know what? Selfishly, that is how I continue to heal. Just like you have this ministry to share people's stories. Like, this is how I stay better,
Yeah.
right? Like, we don't get to keep a gift if we don't give the gift away.
Yep.
I believe that.
Yeah.
So I believe it so much so that because my life depends on it, I have to do this. I want to do it. But it gets tiring pouring into people. It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can get a little burned out.
Not easy. So you have to have self-care.
Yeah.
And boundaries.
Yep. Absolutely. And we only have a couple minutes left, so that unfortunately, time for me to ask my last question. It's always my favorite question because
Okay.
it can change depending on how your day's gone or what you got on your mind. But what is one thing that you truly love about yourself that's not related to your physical appearance?
Mm. So I love that, and this is part of my paragraph. I am positive, I'm confident, I'm joyful, I'm empowered, I'm a warrior, I'm limitless, I have mountain moving faith, I have integrity, I am the dominant force in my life. All of those things. Like I truly believe that. I had to write it for years before I believed it, but now like I feel it because I'm not drinking alcohol or doing anything I'm not supposed to be doing. Like I truly feel those things about myself.
If you've enjoyed tonight's episode, please make sure you check out the episode description. You'll find links there on how you can learn more about this guest, links to connect with them on social media, and how to support the podcast. Remember, I don't get paid to do this. My boss is a bit tight-fisted, but I can say that. I work for myself.